Welcome to this Zombicide Black Plague painting tutorial. In this video we'll be painting Samson the Dwarf from the Black Plague core box set, using the official Warpaint Zombicide Black Plague paint set from the Army Painter, as well as sprays and brushes and Zombicide war paints. But first, let's have a look at the products we used in this tutorial. We used the miniature file set, the color primer Barbarian Flesh, and of course the Black Plague paint set. We also used the Zombie core set and the two expansions Toxic Prison set and the Survivor paint set. We used the Most Wanted brush set, and we finished off with Aegis Suit satin varnish for protection. The miniatures in the Zombicide set are of excellent quality and detail. However, you still need to remove the mold lines using the files from the miniature file set. There's 3 different shapes of files, making it easy to find the right file for the job. Afterwards, it's essential to wash the miniatures in hot soapy water to remove any residue of release agent used in the casting process. If you don't, you might find your paint struggling to stick to the models when you're painting later on. Looking at the artwork, you can see Samson is only half clad, so we went for the color primer Barbarian Flesh, as this is the most dominant area on the model. Color primers are unique sprays, a combination of primer and color in one, and need to be used differently from other hobby sprays. Start off by shaking the can for at least 1.5 minutes to really mix the heavy pigment inside. We stuck the miniature to some cardboard while spraying for control and also to stop the model from falling over. The coverage of color primers is second to none. The sprays come loaded with heavy pigment, and you must spray from a distance of 20 centimeters or preferably even closer. Notice how we start the spray action to the side of the model and move the spray across. No short bursts directly on the miniature. Finish off by turning the spray upside down and empty the nozzle until only gas comes out. And here we have Samson the Dwarf with his fellow heroes sprayed with other color primers. Remove the model from the board and we are ready for painting. With the spray completely dry, it's time to paint. Normally I start with a skin tone, but of course the color primer Barbarian Flesh has done all the job for me. Barbarian Flesh is exactly the same color as the Survivor skin. So I move on to paint Samson's armor and boots using the Necromancer cloak from the Black Plague paint set. The trick now is really just to get paint all over the area, whilst of course avoiding to get paint onto the skin. Should that happen, you can always touch up any mistakes using the Survivor skin. Then I move on to paint Samson's beard and hair using the Brain Matter beige from the Zombie core set. As you can see, I'm using the Regiment brush to most of my base coat stages, as it's a way to keep up a good pace on your painting. Next, I'm moving on to the trousers, and they've been painted wolf grey, still using the Regiment brush. After that, I proceed to all the leather areas, and what's better colour than leather brown? There's an option of also using other browns, for instance for the belts and straps, like the dirt spatter from the Zombie core set. But I'm sticking to the leather brown all the way through, as it speeds up my painting and I don't have to change colours. Notice how I'm still using the Regiment brush, even as this is a small area on the model. Brush has got a good fine point and it keeps my painting fast and efficient. The next bit is to do the metallics, and I'm using the Claymore blade from the Zombicide Black Plague paint set. For the largest areas, like the hammer, I'm using the Regiment brush, but for the small buckles and bits, I'm actually using the Insane Detail brush, as that requires a bit more precision. And I'm finishing off with the straps on the hammer, and they're being painted bony spikes from the Toxic Prison paint set. And now it's time to shade the model. And I'm going to be using the deep shader all over the model. Take out your regiment brush and simply splash on a good amount of ink. The trick here is for the ink to flow into the deepest recesses and create that 3D effect. Make sure you don't leave too big pools of ink on the model. Simply go over the model again, sort of sucking up any excess ink, leaving a good amount of ink on the model to do the magic. Once the deep shader is completely dry, it's time to highlight the model. As with all the models in this series, I'm starting with the flesh. And I'm using the Survivor skin from the Survivor paint set. Using the Insane Detail brush, the first highlight is a case of redefining the base coat color. The aim is to leave some of the deep shader showing in the deepest recesses, like in the eye sockets or around the nose. Notice how I lock my wrists together to prevent my hands from shaking too much. With the first highlight done, I move on to a second highlight, this time using a mix of Brain Matter Beige and the Survivor skin. With the second highlight, the aim is to paint on a smaller area, only on the very raised edges of the nose and on the muscles and on the brows. That's to create that extra 3D effect, bearing in mind that when you play a game of Zombicide, you generally look at a model from a distance of about a foot and you need to exaggerate the shading. With the skin done, I move on to the trousers. I'm using wolf grey as in the base coat stage, redefining the color at the first highlight. Then I move on highlighting the trousers with a mix of wolf grey and zombie skin. I'm actually using my regiment brush to highlight the trousers, but you might find that using the Insane Detail brush gives you a bit more control. I continue my work on Samson using the same two steps. First highlight of the brown is using leather brown, the same as the base coat color, and I'm using my regiment brush for this. For the second highlight on the brown area, I'm using a 50-50 mix of leather brown and bony spikes from the Toxic Prison paint set. I'm using the Insane Detail brush now, highlighting primarily the edges of the brown areas, like on the gloves. For the leather straps on the back of the gloves and the straps on the handle of the hammer, I'm highlighting with zombie skin from the zombie core set, still using the Insane Detail brush, of course. The dark grey armor is highlighted first using Necromancer Cloak and also mixing in a bit of Filthy Suit. For second highlight, I'm using pure Filthy Suit, trying to keep the highlights very thin so you don't end up with a grey shirt. You want a dark, almost blackish armor. The next bit is the beard and the hair, and here I'm using Brain Matter Beige. I'm actually using the regiment brush, but notice how I'm using the flat side of the brush. I'm not having a lot of paint on it, so it's sort of a semi-dry brush, semi-highlight. The beard and the hair is getting only a single highlight of Brain Matter Beige, so you might want to give it 2 coats just to get really strong beige color. All the middle bits are getting a single highlight of Claymore Blade, using the regiment brush or the Insane Detail brush, wherever is appropriate. Samson has no doubt been bashing zombies left, right and center, so it's time to add some glistening blood to the hammer. By using only a little paint at a time, I can create the effect of blood streaking up the hammer. I finish up Samson doing the eyes. First, a bit of deep shader into the eye sockets again. Once that's dry, I take a bit of Brain Matter Beige, using the Insane Detail brush without shaking, painting a line of white in each eye. Then I finish off with a dot of Dead Black in each eye, and Samson is done. Now it's time to do the base, and I'm following the same steps as with all the miniatures in these tutorials. First, a base coat of filthy soot. Next follows a stippling using the necromancer cloak. I'm using the small dry brush for this technique, making sure I don't have a lot of paint on the brush. And this is to simulate dirt and grime in the underground. With that done, it's time to add a bit of old blood to the base. I'm using the crusted saw from the zombie core set, and I'm thinning it ever so slightly to represent the old blood having seeped out into the dirt. The trick here is to feather the edges of each pool using a slightly damp brush. And finally, I finish off with a few dabs of the glistening blood to represent the freshly spilled blood from when Samson is hammering somebody. And that's Samson all painted up, ready for some zombie bashing. Samson the Dwarf is all painted up, but before we start to game with him, we need to protect him. And for that, we're using the Achy Suit Satin Varnish. It's a good strong varnish, designed for protecting your miniatures from the wear and tear of the battle game. Give the models a few thin coats of Achy Suit from each side from a distance of about 30 centimeters. Please note that that's longer than when you're using your color primer. Hold the nozzle upside down and empty the can, and it's ready for next time. And that's Samson the Dwarf all done. Spending a good evening on the painting, he's now ready for some gaming. Make sure you check out our other tutorial videos on the other survivors, on the zombies, on the necromancer, and of course the abomination. Enhance your gaming and play with painted miniatures. Thanks for watching.